I just want to express my thanks to the University of Chicago Center in Delhi to have invited me here, and I'm very happy to be among young students, and they have to grapple with the existing framework, understand the framework, understand the requirements, and come up with solutions. It is not an easier said than done, very difficult. So as the fellows in DMICDC will attest, but they have done a wonderful job throughout the year. They have been confronted with completely new problems, and they have been defined the sort of the boundary conditions were defined by us, because there are certain things in life that you may like to do, but you will never have everything that you want. So the boundary conditions are important. And within those boundary conditions, solutions have to be found which are workable, which are functional. So I'm very happy to be here and to be able to share our thoughts with this group. Now, coming to DMICDC, in particular, and industrial corridors. DMIC is part of the whole concept of industrial corridors and about building a new India. So what is it? I'll just try to describe briefly to you so that you understand the context. The context is that India is grappling with three big challenges right now. Number one is the challenge of urbanization. Now, about 30 persons per minute from rural areas are migrating to urban areas. The pace of urbanization, therefore, is scorching. And one has to find a solution to this scorching pace of urbanization in India. Unless we do so, every city will become a slum. So this is a very big challenge for India. Challenge number two is the necessity for planned infrastructure. India needs about $1 trillion in the next 5 years only to build its infrastructure. I'm talking about roads, highways, ports, logistics, everything. So it has to be a planned infrastructure. It cannot be haphazard because the resources are limited. Challenge number three is that of manufacturing, because India cannot grow only on the back of agriculture and services. If you see India today, if you see the proportion of GDP contributed by various sectors, you'll find agriculture contributes about 14 to 15% to India's GDP and employs about 60% of the population. So once you see that, it is clearly unsustainable. And in order to break this cycle, somewhere down the line, technology has to be infused into agriculture, and the surplus labor which comes out of agriculture will have to be trained, will have to be skilled, and they will have to be absorbed in these cities. So this is challenge number three. So out of these, and DMIC project is the only project of its kind, or only project that can be conceived in the manner it has been, that can address all the three challenges together. That is why DMICDC becomes very important in building a new India. So therefore, it is a transformational project. It is not an incremental project that you do slowly. It has to be done. And we have to catch up. Since we are late urbanizers, we have to catch up by using ICT technology, and build smart cities, which are more livable, which attract talent and capital, and which improve the quality of life of its citizens, while being sustainable at the same time. Because while cities will contribute about 70% of India's GDP by 2030, they are also big guzzlers of resources and big generators of carbon. So you have to be careful about what we are doing. We have to do it in an optimal manner. We have to have a renewable energy roadmap. We have to have energy reduction strategies. We have to have water recycling strategies. We have to use technology to make the whole infrastructure set more efficient than what each one would have been if they were standing alone by themselves. So this is what DMICDC is about. It is about these three challenges that I described. building smart industrial cities which are greenfield, which are master planned, which are engineered to world-class standards, which are executed, for which there is a well-defined and robust institutional and financial structure which will take us there. So all that has been done in DMICDC. I will not like to go into details because of the constraints on time. But if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Let me introduce the fellows. I think Matt and Shivangi are from economics background. Neelakshi is an urban planner. Kaustubh is not here, but he is an architect. And Urveel is from the biology background. So they are all, it's a diverse, multidisciplinary group, and they worked on 4 key initiatives. I leave it to them to describe that. And if there are any questions, we'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
So what we thought that we would do today is give you guys an idea, a little bit more detailed idea of the project context that we're working in, discuss the discuss the framework that the DMIC uses in order to develop its cities, and then discuss our project team and our role as we saw it carved into DMIC, discuss the stakeholders that we were dealing with, and then go in depth on the exact work streams that we worked on and the challenges and learnings that we had going from there. So the second part of this presentation will be given by my colleague Shivangi Jain. So let's get started. So here's just a roadmap of how our presentation is going to present, and then the relevant circle will be highlighted to kind of orient you as we move along. So as Mr. Kumar mentioned, there are India is dealing with a variety of challenges. The first one is urbanization, as he discussed. So the only point that we'd like to make here is that by 2030, GDP will be 70% of India's GDP will be produced by these cities, and so we really need to start thinking about how these cities are going to be developed and create a space for these urbanizing populations. One factor that Mr. Kumar didn't mention is the unemployment. So right now there are about 30 million unemployed people in India by some estimates, and this number will only grow if we don't support our manufacturing capacity because of India's age structure. So currently 64% of India's population is in the working group, and that's only going to increase as we go forward. The third is manufacturing. So India currently deals with a negative trade balance, meaning that we import a lot more than we actually export. So the government of India has targeted a GDP contribution of manufacturing of 25% by the year 2025. And so, as Mr. Kumar mentioned, the DMIC is a project that that the government of India is doing in order to address these concerns. The backbone of this project is a DFC, or a dedicated freight corridor. What this rail line will do is that it will revolutionize the way that products are transported throughout India. And so one example of this is that currently to transport a product from Delhi to Mumbai to the JNPT port that is located there, it takes about 14 days by road. Once this corridor is up and running, it will only take 14 hours to do so. So this is really a transformational kind of initiative. And what the government of India is doing is that they're trying to leverage this infrastructure and develop cities that manufacture so that they can contribute to the manufacturing output that this DFC will allow us to do. And so as part of that, we're building 24 new cities across 6 different states. So this is just a schematic of those 6 states. And you see Delhi and Mumbai highlighted. So here's our cartoonish picture of the dedicated freight corridor. And in the first stage of this project, we are building 7 early bird cities. And so there's one in Haryana, one in Uttar Pradesh, one in Rajasthan, one in Madhya Pradesh, one in Gujarat, and 2 in Maharashtra. You'll notice that 2 other structures are right by Delhi, and one is by Mumbai. That is what Mr. Kumar was referring to in terms of logistics. So these are going to be multimodal logistics hubs that will help to get the goods onto and off of the dedicated freight corridor. The project in Rajasthan is highlighted red because this is also, in this city, there will also be a massive solar project that will also address those energy concerns that India is dealing with. So what we would like to do right now is give you guys an idea of how these cities actually come up and the framework that we've been using to think about these issues. Sorry, I forgot that the two cities that we have been focusing on primarily are the one outside of Delhi in Uttar Pradesh, which is the Integrated Industrial Township at Greater Noida, and then the other one is the Dholera Special Investment Region in Gujarat. So let's take one of these cities, this DMIC node. What comes first is the anchor tenant, which is a large Indian company or a multinational corporation that can really bring the employment to kickstart the development of these nodes. Once that anchor tenant comes, he comes with many micro, small, and medium enterprises that create a sustainable industrial ecology that can also contribute more people, more jobs. And once this comes in, we can build around that with supporting residential and commercial infrastructure so that the people actually have a place to live, they have a place to enjoy themselves, and buy the necessary goods that they need. And once this city is further developed, you're bringing in more industrial clusters, you're bringing in more residential, you're bringing in more commercial. And so, as you can see, the anchor tenant is one of the most crucial pieces for the development of these cities. And so after all of this development happens, what we hope to have is something that looks like this. A beautiful green city that has a variety of smart city components and livable components that the DMIC has planned for. So some of these are transport-oriented development. So what we want is for these cities to be very connected and to minimize the use of cars and increase the environmental sustainability. Also, we'd like to have these cities to be smart. And now, in India, there's a lot of confusion over what does smart mean in these cities. There's many definitions, and no one has really locked one down. But the way that we understand a smart city is that in terms of, at this stage, our basic infrastructure will be enabled with technology so that if there's a problem with the sewer system or if there's a problem with the power, then the command center in the city can have an idea of exactly where those problems are and address those issues in real time. The city will also be equipped with provisions so that the city can add in other services as they want. So an optical fiber cable to provide really high fast connectivity, Wi-Fi, maybe even integrated traffic control systems. So there's a lot of potential for us to really take what a city is now and make it even better as India moves on. We want the cities to be walkable and livable, and what that is that you're not commuting 30 to 40 minutes every single day in order to get to your job, that everything that you need in terms of your commercial, your job, and your housing is all within walking distance. We also hope to have efficient governance through this city command center so that any issues can be resolved very seamlessly. Mixed-use development is one of the processes that can help us attain this walkable and livable city framework. And what this is having industrial, commercial, and residential all in the same area, perhaps even in the same building. And so this is a principle that we've used in order to accomplish this walkability and livability goal. We also want plug-and-play factories because, as we mentioned earlier, these cities will be manufacturing focused. And so plug and play allows industries to just come in, set up their machinery, and get started. They don't have to worry about actually building their buildings. They don't have to worry about getting that infrastructure, that high quality power and water infrastructure that they need in order to be successful. And then clean energy, we're looking into a sustainable energy roadmap for these cities. How can we get these cities to be as energy independent as possible? And also ease of doing business. In order for us to fully leverage these cities, we need to make it easier for companies to do business in India, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And so a crucial part of understanding how the DMIC will actually go about developing these cities is understanding the governance framework behind it. So the city is currently governed by an SPV, which is a special purpose vehicle. And this special purpose vehicle is a 50-50 partnership between the state government and the central government. The equity in this SPV is provided by the central government in the form of funds that is equal to the amount of land that the state governments have contributed. So the state government gives the land for the city, and then the central government gives the funds to develop trunk-level infrastructure and kickstart its development. So here we wanted to break down exactly how that process goes. So first, the city, the central government and the state government conduct a pre-feasibility study where they try to understand the location, market assessment, and land monetization. A crucial thing to understand in these developments is that the state government is contracting out this work. Once the location, the identification of which industries will come in, and the land monetization strategy is thought of, then they go into master planning and preliminary engineering. And once again, this process is contracted out to consultants to produce a trunk-level infrastructure design and a business plan for its development. In the background, the DMIC and the state governments are working on approvals and finding out and getting exactly all of the necessary clearances in order to make this development happen. Once those trunk-level infrastructure tender documents are prepared and then released, they're floated, and then we can go into detailed design and construction of the infrastructure. And so to give you an idea of where certain processes happen, the state government transfers the land around this master planning and preliminary engineering design phase, and your marketing for anchor tenants really starts with the trunk level, with the release of the tender documents for the trunk level infrastructure. What we found in the course of our research was that if you started to market before this, no one is really interested in hearing about a project that will have infrastructure in 3 years. They want to have some solid progress as to what is happening on that front. So this gray box highlights what had happened before we entered, and this blue box enters our time period. So we came in when master planning and design was being completed for all of these cities, and now we've recently seen the release of these tenders. So that's just to give you an understanding of where we started and where we ended. So here we want to go through the complex web of stakeholders and government organizations that we have to keep in mind with and communicate with to give you an idea of what our daily work is like. So here we are IIC-DMICDC team, and then the DMICDC collaborates with state governments on the development of these cities. So we have to communicate with them on, as much as we can, understand the developments that happen on their end. So for the development of these cities, as I mentioned, the consultants play a very large role in the marketing of this, and so we also have to coordinate with those consultants. In addition to this, the DMIC has its own project management consultants, and so we are constantly communicating with them. And then every state and central government organization also has its political leaders and its government leaders that have agendas of their own, priorities of their own, and so we have to also think about those when considering any projects that we're doing. And then we also have to consider kind of the future and other stakeholders that will come into this project. So right now we're not interacting directly with existing populations or future residents, industry leaders, and private developers, but in order to we have to keep all of these perspectives in mind in order to make sure that our projects are actually sustainable and make sense. So we've had to reach out to these various stakeholders. So I just want to take a moment to summarize where that context puts us. So one is that this project is very high stakes. So there's a massive amount of attention to this project, and it will play a transformative role in India. And so whatever interventions that we decide to do, they're going to have a massive impact or a massive risk. So we always have to consider, what is the chance of this failing, and also what is the potential reward that we can have if we implement this specific part. Another thing is that greenfield cities aren't really done before. This is the first project that's really looking at a new city and developing and planning everything at the beginning, and is less of this. It's less of a natural development and more of the planned development. Also, we have to consider long-term viability and short-term impact. So a lot of these, a lot of the projects that we'll talk about, and a lot of the components that go into master planning rely on large, heavy capital investments that will pay off in the long term. So we have to consider, is this short-term risk enough for our is it enough for the long-term viability of the project? And then the last two things are also this complex organizational structure. Each of the stakeholders that we talked about has its own bureaucracy, has its own way that it goes about doing things. And so we have to understand those structures and then communicate accordingly. And then, as I mentioned, we also have to consider the political motivations. So taking in all of these ideas, we found that our role was more of a special projects team that focused on new and special projects and introduced new ideas instead of actually doing any of the master planning or doing some of the contracted work out, because that is legally required to be done by our consultants. So now Shivangi will go through the project lifecycle and describe our work streams in detail.
So getting a strategy for getting an anchor tenant for IIT Greater Noida was like our mandated work stream. Another mandated work stream that we worked on was a city-level single window. So this is a true single window which integrates all the back-end authorities that give you establishment, operations, and exit clearances in one office. The last two were branding for DMIC-DC cities, so creating brochures and websites and basically like a marketing strategy around every node that comes up, and a holistic city design. So how do you plan your cities to the best of your ability? So the first one is our strategy for anchor tenant. As I already mentioned, it was a given mandate, and we entered the process when the pre-feasibility study and the market assessment had already been done. So the consultants had already sort of narrowed down, these are the three main sort of target sectors, which were high-tech, biotech, and research and development. And although the market assessment had been completed, the marketing to these target sectors had not begun. So just to go through our project timeline, just bear with us through this graphic. So the circles on this chart describe the deliverables that we submitted during the work stream, and the exclamation points are sort of the challenges that we faced in each work stream. And the yellow line next to the blue line is sort of our period of socializing. So I'll just go through each work stream in detail. So as we already mentioned, we entered the process when the market assessment had already been done. So because all of us are fresh out of college, we don't really know exactly what the process of getting an anchor tenant is. So a lot of our first few days were spent socializing and doing an industry analysis. So examining exactly how each sector sort of starts its cluster, and also what steps DMICDC needs to take in order to attract an anchor tenant. So during day 0 to day 100, we socialized all our findings and we created a marketing strategy. However, because DMICDC was still in the process of finalizing its trunk level infrastructure, the tenders were not in a sort of state to be released. So while we waited for the tenders to be released, we worked on a database of contacts. So we compiled all the contacts of industry associations like FICCI and CII, and also potential anchor tenants, so listed companies that we thought would be a really good anchor tenant for IIT Greater Noida. And we compiled that database. And we also created a statewide industrial sector suitability analysis. So this analysis basically details out the methodology for figuring out which node on your DMIC, so which of the 24 cities is ideal for a specific sector. So while doing that, we took chemical sector as our sort of pilot sector, and that's replicable and scalable. And once the Dhalera tenders were released, we worked on the Dhalera policy analysis, so determining exactly what sort of policies the Gujarat government has to implement in order to ensure that Dhalera is actually very competitive and can get an anchor tenant. And that resulted in our final Dhalera anchor strategy. The IIT Greater Noida tenders have just been released, and so we're hoping that our anchor tenant marketing strategy for IIT Greater Noida will now be implemented. Our next work stream was single window. So again, this was a given mandate to us by Mr. Kumar, and it was sort of the aim was to create a true back-end single window. So a lot of states in India have a front-end single window where the investors can interact with the state government through one front-end portal, but those applications still go to several offices at the back end that cause a lot of delays. So our goal with creating the single window was to ensure that every authority that gives a clearance, both establishment and operations, is working out of the same office. The model that we came up with was replicable and scalable, and we also went about the process in such a way that no legislative change was required. So we looked at the legalities of each of our recommendations and made sure that all of our recommendations were implementable through draft notifications and orders. So just going through the timeline of the project, we started off and with none of us having any legal background or also knowing anything about exactly how a company starts and how they operate. Initially, our first deliverable was creating a comprehensive list of clearances, all establishment, operation, and exit clearances that any company, even sector-specific ones like food and drug, might need to take in order to function. So most of our year was spent socializing all of our findings. And the first list of clearances that we created was approximately, I think it's one of the most comprehensive lists that we've seen, and it's over 100 clearances. After this, we we looked at each of the laws associated with each of the clearances, and we determined exactly which authority in the current government structure in Uttar Pradesh gives each clearance, and whether in the current legal system, if it's easy to devolve that power to a person sitting in a city-level office. After completing our point of origin study, we also went to several states such as Rajasthan, Punjab, Telangana. All of these states are doing great work to increase their ease of doing business, and we wanted to understand exactly how they were going about that and get the best learnings and implement that in IIT Greater Noida. So this work stream ended in us creating a draft proposal. This draft proposal, of course, included all our case studies, our recommendations, and they also included draft notifications and orders that we'd created, and once published, this single window could be implemented. This proposal then went for legal vetting, and there was some administrative delays in the vetting process, but now our proposal is with the UP Chief Secretary. Our third and fourth initiative that I'm going to talk about, these were self-initiated. So the marketing and branding strategy, this was something that DMICDC had been thinking about, but it was on the back burner because they had a lot of other work on their hand. So considering that we have two very creative people on our team, we decided to take on this task. And our main sort of deliverable with this branding exercise was we created a unique identity for the DMICDC as a whole. And we also aligned it with the Make in India marketing campaign because it already gotten so much traction. We thought we could just piggyback off of that. The model that we've created is replicable and scalable. And sort of what resulted in the entire initiative was a draft branding framework that was to be implemented after the tenders were to be published, and also brochure and web templates that we will release soon. Because there were some delays on the tender timelines, we, in the meantime, got samples and quotations for our brochures and web templates, and we also incorporated our brochures into the Dhalera marketing strategy. Now that the tenders have been released, we're hoping that very soon we'll be able to publish all our brochures and go forward with that. And our last main initiative was holistic city design. So this was another project that we initiated ourselves. Initially, while working, so we decided to work with the ELM team. It's sort of experiential learning module. It's a module that is used in Young India Fellowship. And so we partnered with a group of fellows from Young India Fellowship and decided to create a draft metric system. So basically, how should we measure each of the verticals of a city, like water, power, exactly what are the parameters that we should measure them on, how should we compare ourselves to other cities that are doing the same thing. And we dealt with a lack of domain knowledge, but that was quickly combated by socializing our work with consultants. And this resulted in two main deliverables. So the first one was trunk-level infrastructure benchmarking. Our urban metrics report actually helped DMICDC assess exactly what the consultants had recommended, how did it compare to other cities around the world. And this is sort of a process that DMICDC has taken on and is implementing among all of its projects now. And the second one that we took on was development control regulations. So currently in India, our cities don't have very detailed development control regulations, and we wanted something more concrete and more detailed, such that we knew exactly what the city that we were planning for would look like. These are two initiatives that we initially thought would be very impactful, but because of the stage that we were at the entire project, we decided to drop the smart city concepts and land monetization. And so this is sort of what our entire year looked like. As you can see, so we did a lot of projects, so across a variety of disciplines. So we did design projects, we did legal projects, and a lot of them were a mix of mandated projects from DMICDC and also self-initiated. And because of the various constraints that each project brought with it, so lack of domain knowledge, the exact timeline of each project, we also made a lot of pivots throughout the year and allocated our resources such that we were getting the most out of the year. So just going to quickly go through the challenges that we faced. So generating buy-in. As fresh graduates, it was often difficult for us to ensure that our ideas were being heard and implemented and taken seriously. So one thing that really helped with generating buy-in was completed staff work. So for example, in the DCR's initiative, we ensured that like our idea of exactly what we wanted to do with development control regulations were completely thought out. How we wanted to implement it was pretty much thought out, and we wanted to communicate that to our leaders. Some other challenges that we sort of faced was continuity of work. So since we're fellows only for 1 year with the organization, how do we ensure that the work that we've come up with and the recommendations that we've come up with are actually implemented after we're gone? So our way of combating this was to leave behind processes and not products. So one example of this is our marketing and branding framework. What we've left behind is exactly how every node should sort of approach its marketing, how they can use the templates to create unique identities for each of the nodes. Another thing that we dealt with is lack of data and domain knowledge, and the main way of going about this was socializing. So we met with several stakeholders, several experts in each of the fields that we worked in, and made sure that at every stage, whenever we had like a finding, we were validating that finding. One thing that Urveel already mentioned was the complex organizational dynamics that we were working in, understanding exactly what the motivation was of each stakeholder and who sort of controlled what aspect of the project was very important. But this was also sort of a positive because in our single window project, we used Mr. Kumar's like great love for that project and really leveraged that to get most done. The last two challenges were implementation, so making sure that what we recommended on a high policy level was actually implementable on the ground, and the fact that, as Urveel mentioned, there was basically no precedence for greenfield cities. So how do you ensure that the recommendations that you are proposing are actually correct or will be implementable in the future? So some of the learnings that we had was find a champion, make sure that like if you can find one person in your government organization who's very passionate about the project that you're working on, you can get a lot of work done that way. Advocate for projects that you really believe in. Development control regulations was something that's still not done across India in cities, but we believe that that was a very important step to take if we wanted to ensure that all of our cities were absolutely world-class. And so we advocated heavily for that and are in the process of getting that implemented. Work pivots, it's very difficult to leave work streams and switch them very fast, but in sort of a structure where you're not sure exactly how each constraint is and when each constraint is going to come up, it's really important to make sure that you're flexible and you allocate your resources and time. And the last few, we learned a lot of new skills, such as single window, where we learned how to read the law. Socializing helps a lot, especially when you're working in a field that you're not very familiar with. And completed staff work really helps build credibility. And this is sort of the impact that we've measured ourselves on. So our DCR work has led to an increase in monetizable land by 32%, decrease in waste to landfill by 7%, and reduction in non-revenue water by 6%. These are all figures from the consultant reports. And we hope that by implementing our single window, we're going to reduce the authorities that give the clearances down to 12 authorities in a single office. So that should increase ease of doing business. And we also hope to increase DMICDC's brand value, improve the quality of urban life, and increase economic diversity by increasing the number of sectors that IIT-GN is currently considering. And thank you.